excited to be here and to address certain topics that would be of interest to pretty much all parents. We've agreed on three. The first one we will talk about in more depth today. The first one is connection and communication. And as we've noticed, these two are so intertwined, you really cannot separate them. Without communicating effectively, there is no connection, right? We all see how our kids push away. And we'll be talking about that today. The second topic coming up another time will be about boundaries. And one of the really big issues about boundaries is that parents try to set them, but they have great difficulty in following through on them. So I'll give you a tip right now. Consider what you're setting as a boundary and ask yourself, am I 100% committed to following through? And if the answer is no, don't even bring it up. Okay. And the third one is balancing character with achievement. So my own experience has told me that achievements are wonderful. Those are all the measurable things. But those can come and go. None of them are guaranteed. And in the end, it's your personal character, your attitude, your effort, the strengths that you have. Those are the things that are going to take you through life. So that'll be the third element that we talk about.
Great topics. Something that all of us parents, I think, are very, very curious about and, face at any given point, working with our children. So we're really excited to hear all that you have to share, Fern, on these topics.
So I guess I'll start with the first question we have. What do you see are the most common communication challenges between parents and their tweens or teens?
Oh, I don't think this will come as any surprise that, for starters, we are not great listeners. We're not great listeners. We tend to jump in with judgments, criticism, fixing, problem solving, and the kids aren't stupid. They know what's going on, right? And that starts to cause a distance. So we're not good listeners. We're sitting around thinking about how we're going to respond to something. Kids are reading our body language. They can tell. And the thing that we want most, which is to have that influence on them, we're losing because we are so focused on what needs to get done. And all of those things really are based in fear and indecision and confusion and all that, right? Fear, the two biggest motivators in life are love and fear. And unfortunately, fear wins out a lot of the time. And as I said before, the kids really do understand that that's what's going on. So they push back. And then the kids are sitting there thinking, you don't understand me. You've never been me. You say you were a teenager, but I don't really believe that.
One that I've heard is, oh, you're old. That was back then. This right. is so different now. You don't understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to be fair, at this point, I can honestly say we don't understand. I'm probably older than all of you here. I remember civil defense drills during the Cold War as a child, and it was under your desk. Now, obviously, going under your desk wasn't going to help anything, but it gave us a sense that we could do something. But that threat was out there somewhere. It was very vague. We didn't have it in our face every day. These kids have grown up during a pandemic. Their whole lives were turned upside down. There are school shootings. The world is a much scarier place. And when we talk about things like apathy and school refusal and all of that, I think it's legitimate that they're wondering, why bother?
Fern, you mentioned the things that really drive our emotions are love and fear. So, if we're sitting from the parent seat, which you're really there as a parent advocate to help us engage our children, raise them to be successful and happy adults. When we have the fear, we're scared to ask some questions because we don't understand. Like you mentioned, we really don't understand what their lives are like sometimes. Are there a couple of suggestions before we find ourselves jumping in, interrupting, telling them what they should or shouldn't do? Yeah. When we know that we're scared and we're unfamiliar with the topic, what should we do?
The first thing I suggest is that we talk about looking at what our motivation is, right? because I can speak from personal experience as well that very often the motivation for me doing something, I say it's about my child, and it is, but it's also about me. I want to feel better about how the situation is going or not going.
Yep.
So question, and this takes time, right? We don't just wake up one morning and go, okay, from now I'm going to catch myself. It takes time to kind of reprogram, redirect yourself. But once you get there, it's like, okay, what is this really all about for me? And after that, rather than offering solutions or telling our kids how it could be done better, which of course is going to go over like a lead balloon, I love to call them curious questions. Tell me more about that. I'm not clear about that. Explain it to me. What can you tell me about that? Because we want our goal, especially, I say especially in this generation, that sounds awful, but we want them to think for themselves. And they can't think for themselves
100%.
if we're always giving them the answers. So it's up to us to ask these, yes, somewhat leading questions, but generic enough that they don't feel they're being attacked and go on the defensive. So we start to ask those curious questions as well. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, what do you do when they just start completely shutting down? So, you're trying to probe, you're trying to kind of understand where they're coming from, but they're in a very emotionally maybe charged or just very emotional state at that point, and they're not really giving a lot of feedback. Like, do you have any tips on how you kind of can calm that situation and get them to be able to kind of give you those thoughts or give you some insight as to how they're feeling about the situation?
That's not something that we can push. One of the other things I've learned is that there's just so much that we can do, but we cannot guarantee the result. Okay, and that's for us to learn how to cope with. That being said, one thing that I do suggest to parents is ask your child, what do they need from you right now? I love this one. Sweetheart, I see that you're really upset. What do you need from me right now? Do you need a hug? You just need for me to listen? Do you want me to help you problem solve? Or do you just want me to leave you alone? The goal behind all of that is to create the trust that isn't there. It's excruciating, I think, for teenagers, and we all were once, to think about being vulnerable with our parents, because their experience up until now, for most of them, has been, it doesn't matter what I say, my parents are going to just keep operating the way they always do. So it's going to take time till they recognize that it's safe to talk to you. So I don't suggest pushing or asking really leading questions like, come on, tell me, you can trust me. You know that I'm here to help you. I love you. I would do anything for you. And maybe all they want is for you to just listen, hug them, and walk out of the room. Questions on that?
So if we go back, we're generally referring to the teens and tweens right now. So let's go back to the easy days when we had the little kids and they looked at us like we were perfect, we were all knowing, we were little superheroes ourselves, and it was such open communication. We could tell them anything, they would tell us anything.
Mm-hmm.
How does that shift happen from the open communication as a child to the guarded teenage responses like Kim was just asking about?
Okay. So there's normal adolescent development anyway, and I don't claim to be an expert about that, but there's something programmed into those adolescent years about separation, just the same way your toddler needed to separate from you. No, mommy, I'll do it myself. Don't do that. I can do it, right? Teenagers are going through the same thing, only now the stakes are different and the stakes are higher, but it's normal for them to separate. And the conflict here is that they still need us. On a good day, they're confused. Now put that into the mix of, I want to figure out who I am, where am I going, how do I fit in, and yet how am I unique? So there's the social peer setting. And I want my parents to give me more responsibility and more privileges, but I don't necessarily feel ready for them, or I doubt my abilities. You know, there's a lot of internal conflict going on at that time, and we haven't figured out how to parent differently, right? So that thing keeps rolling around. We're still trying to parent them like they're 8 years old. Can't do that anymore. And that, again, is where that disconnect happens.
Yeah, I think it's, as a parent, I've experienced like I feel like there's different stages in their life where you feel really strong. Like there's some parents that are like, wow, the infant stage, that was really, really hard for me. Personally, for me, it's that preteen stage. It's kind of that 6th to 8th grade transition where they're no longer a little kiddo. But they also don't really quite know who they are at this point. You know, they're emulating behaviors that they see with their peers. They're not really comfortable being who they are, so they're kind of in that awkward space. And so as a parent, I have 3 children, and with my 2 oldest, that stage was difficult with both of them. Like just as a parent, I almost felt like I was a foreigner in that relationship. I didn't quite know how to parent them, and then once they kind of transitioned to, okay, I now know who I am, and I'm heading towards adulthood. I feel like I have a really great relationship with my kids, but it has been for both children, and it'll be interesting with my youngest, the most difficult time. And so I think as parents, like we all kind of have our areas where it's a hard stage of parenting, and I thought maybe it would get easier with my middle, and it did not. It was still just a very awkward stage for me as a parent, and so that communication and just that relationship in general was awkward during that time period.
That's a really interesting point, you know, and one of you had mentioned when they're really little, we can do no wrong, we're perfect. They look up to us, they tell us everything, they come in for the hugs, and then you get to this in-between stage. So I've been listening to some people who talk about that in-between, where it's not one or the other, right? They're not adoring you, or you're not yet at the point where you're looking at each other, maybe not as equals, but you speak to each other in a different way. There's a completely different relationship. So there's the confusion that in between. And again, comes back to us. How do we get settled with that? How do we regulate? That's a big word now, right? Self-regulate. How do we hold back a little bit? Which is why I sometimes think about working with parents of slightly younger children, because it's exactly that transitional stage that they need preparation for, and yet they don't think it's going to happen to them, right? People go to therapists when they're in crisis. Very few. I know some people who do the preventive work, but not that many people go ahead of time and say, you know, I can see this kind of coming up. Well, no, we wait for the crisis to get help. So this
same thing with tutoring, right?
What is that?
Yes,
we see that with tutoring as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say all the time, yeah, please do not call us, you know, when it's 3 weeks before the end of the semester. We went through that just with our daughter, and not by design, but she had a retinal detachment. And so we had about 15 days of missed school. And, you know, at that time you're laying face down. You can't do anything preventative at home. And she does have a learning disability as well. So she requires support just to be on an even playing field with her peers. But you know, missing all of that school, not being able to have the tutoring support, then coming back and trying to catch up and fill in those gaps. You know, we were coming from really far behind, and I cannot tell you the amount of emotional stress that put on her, put on my husband and I. I mean, final exams were, right before Christmas, and it was emotionally very, very charged. And we were tired and sad and frustrated, and she was tired, sad, and frustrated. So I tell my parents all the time, you know, that we didn't really have the choice but to, you know, just try to take it one day at a time like we could. But in an
Exactly.
ideal world, you don't want to be in that crisis mode. I mean, it just makes it so much more difficult to face those challenges head on because you've got so many things coming at you at once. But sometimes, you have your families that plan and they call right when school starts, and then you have those that wait until you get those first quarter grades, and then you have the ones that come in 3 weeks before final exams, and you're like, oh gosh, this is, it's a very, very, very daunting task at that point.
And on a little different note, when you were talking about your daughter's situation with the retina and how there was 2 weeks of lying on her stomach, learning to do the one day at a time thing is the best start, and also to recognize the small accomplishments. We tend to keep the big picture in mind, and my motto is big picture, small steps. Success builds on success. Positive attitude builds on those small steps. And sometimes that first step is really the most significant one. It's not reaching the goal. It's actually doing the thing. And so giving yourself credit, your daughter giving herself credit for what she's accomplished in a day, even if it's just getting through the day with a little less pain or whatever it is. We've got to keep our eyes on those things.
Yeah,
otherwise it's always out there, and out there is very uncertain and very daunting because it's way too big.
Yeah, no, that's a really good call out, and that really was something that we tried and was to focus on. She ended up with all C's and one high D, but that high D was geometry, and it was. There was a lot to fill in, and she went into her final exams, with the flu and 102 fever. And it was not, but she got her highest grade on that test because it's not always about earning the A. I think some parents were really fixated on that A letter grade, but honestly, it can be those small wins too that are super important. It's like, hey, every other test has been a 30%, then you got a 50%, then you got a 70%. Let's celebrate each of those milestones because you're making your way towards that goal, and you're making small incremental improvements. And so for her, that was a big thing. It's like the goal does not look the same for you as it does for your brother, as it does for your college brother. Like all of you are facing different things and making different accomplishments. And so, yeah, that was a big thing, I would say, when we were going through this, to try to keep her positive, because it is easy to be like, man, I know I'm working hard, but my grades really aren't showing it. And it's like, but you don't really realize all the things that you've had to overcome in the last 3 months just to get to where you're at right now. So I think that's a really, really good call out.
And I think we were talking earlier, it may not be here on this recorded piece, but we were talking earlier about balancing out achievement with character. And our culture is so focused on achievement and on all those measurable things. And the thing is, we can say whatever we want in our own home. You're dealing with different challenges. There are different guidelines and measurements for different people. Not everybody operates the same way or is wired the same way. But as soon as they walk out the door, they're in another world.
Yeah.
And especially at an age where peer influence is so important.
So great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Jessica. So, yeah, it's not an easy place to maneuver. So how do we stay connected to our children, to bring it all back and wrap it up in that bow for that topic? Just stay connected with them and remind them of their strengths. And
However small, however little they are. Yeah.
They seem little.
But they're not.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that, I think, in the third episode of this. We can talk about that in more depth.
I'm thinking of, myself as a kid interacting with my parents. I know just the conversation, Kimmy, we're talking about with your daughter and the struggle she had. And she had to have been thinking, nobody understands how hard this is. Yeah. Just how she must have been feeling. We have to remember as parents, we can't feel what our kids are feeling. We are the parent. We are the one that whether they're intentionally looking to us for guidance or not, they're looking to us for guidance. Like, we have to own our piece of that. And you were talking about those incremental wins. I say, I also need to recognize my own incremental wins. And maybe this is just me sort of projecting, but I think about sometimes with, my son he's going to be 7. Actually, he just turned 17. Sometimes doesn't really want to say much. And I get that. And I can't keep pushing and prying because I can see when it's like, okay, we've talked enough. I've said 4 words. That's about my maximum right now. But if I can go, wow, today I got 5 words. Or, hey, today I learned a new thing that the 17-year-olds are saying, and I didn't know that yesterday, and it's because he told me. Or, hey, he took the time to show me some video that he thought was funny. This is a chance for us to connect.
Yep.
Did I get to talk to him about college? No, but I got a little bit closer to understanding what his life is like and what his focus is on.
You know, this may sound a little old-fashioned, but I think that the kitchen is the most amazing room in the house because it's a place where there's usually something going on and people can be in the same space, even if they're not noticeably connecting. If you have that comfortable level of energy in the room, just being in the same room without conflict, some days that's a major event.
Yeah.
You're welcome, right? And you can share space without saying a word and still feel the love. Or you can be doing kitchen tasks or meal prep in the same space and not even talking to each other. But the fact that they're in that space with you, or they just plop down on the sofa next to you without talking, that's love. That's, I still need you. No matter what I say and what I do, I still need you in my world. So bravo.